Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Radically Loved sessions. We're here doing hi, Tess. We're doing our book club, and this is our second session, and I want to apologize for our first session that we had such a glorious first meeting. Um, I recorded it, but it was a corrupted file. We don't know what happened to it. I've still yet to investigate exactly what happened. So, my apologies for those of you that didn't get to see our first session, but here you are. Session number two, everybody's here, and we're going to be going through chapters 5, 6, 7, I think. We'll kind of just see how it goes. But I wanted to just take a moment to welcome everybody again. I'm so excited to be doing this. Those of you that were here last time may hear some of the information as redundant because want to repeat it since we're recording now. Um, I wanted to start a book club, and it's obviously we're doing it on my book for this round. But what I'd like for You Are Radically Loved, shameless plug. But for those of you that are interested, I'd love to do this every month and we'll start to do different books. We're just going to have a fun book club where we can talk about different books. I'm happy to take suggestions from all of you if there's something that you're really loving that you want to bring to the table. I will tell you that our book for September is going to be Build for Tomorrow by my dear friend. Ooh, I know what happened now, Tess. Sorry, guys, I'm having like an admin moment. I know what happened the last time. I just
What?
figured it out. So, you know how the last time everybody's going to get the 411. This is like a work thing that's happening now just because I have Tessa here. Um, I, the last time we did the book club, I had just done a podcast. We had done Wisdom Wednesday, right? We recorded a
Yeah.
podcast. And the same thing just happened now. So, Steven's interview, my screen for the webinar just went really small and it popped up with Steven's downloaded
Ah,
thing.
it's like taking the energy to download that.
Right. And so what I did when it was downloading this after we finished the recording is I hit stop converting.
Oh,
So that's what
shoot.
happened.
Okay. Okay.
I just figured it out. Okay. Sorry, guys. Back to work. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna do September's book is gonna be my friend Jason Pfeiffer. He's the editor in chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. It's called Build for Tomorrow. That's gonna be the book that we're gonna do. So make sure that you pre-order it. So our meeting for September, that's gonna be our book, and I'm doing it because obviously Jason is incredible and he's an incredible writer, and I think this book is going to be really great for all of us to read. But just note to everybody, we can have different types of books. They don't all have to be in the self-help category. They can be in anything. And so my hope is that we just get to discuss the different topics, and we can share our thoughts, and I think it'll be really fun. So that being said, those of you who I've not met yet or are watching this, why did I roll my R's? This is where my English as a second language comes in very strong. Those of you that are watching this after the fact, thank you so much for taking some time to join us, to spend some time with us. We are discussing You Are Radically Loved, and one of the things that I wanted to share in today's session was I wanted to read a little bit and see if some of you would help me read some of these passages so that we can discuss them. The other thing is I want to be able to answer questions that you all may have pertaining to the book, or if there are any topics or um, questions that you all wanted to go a little bit deeper in, I wanted to do that as well. So before we actually begin uh, in chapter five, on chapter five, I wanted to just ask you all a question of where you are currently. And this has to do with the first four chapters that we essentially talked about the last session. The first thing that I want to ask you is how you're feeling today. How's your heart feeling today? What is on your mind? What is overtaking your psyche at the moment? What is it that's weighing on you? What is it that you're feeling? And just take this next 60 seconds to, if you want to write it down, you can. If you want to just think about it, you can. If you want to type it in the chat, you can. But do that now for the next 60 seconds. Just take a moment. Okay. I'm reacting to some of the comments that everybody's leaving. Okay. All right. So we'll get started. If you do happen to have a physical copy of the book, we're going to be on page 65. And before we actually start, I want to address, wow, everybody is in such, if it's okay for me to say, I think collectively we're all feeling the same type of energy. It's this anxious, overwhelmed weight of the world that's on our shoulders currently. So I've taken some time off of social media. I've had somebody, one of my admin gals, just posting on my Instagram stories, reposting and sending me some questions and things. But I got back on it today. So if you messaged me on there, it's going to be a little bit before I respond because I got to get through them all. But it's been actually so nice to be able to disconnect. Um, there was a very tragic event that happened last week on a Tuesday at a school that was absolutely heartbreaking. And as much as I wanted to disconnect from the world while I was on this writer's retreat, this is information you can't really get around. My mom actually lived in Houston, Texas for many years with my little sister and my stepdad. And she happened to know one of the families that was affected by this tragic event. And so obviously I found out about it because my mom called me and we were having this conversation. And it just started to bring to mind all of the incredible tragedies, all of this anxiety, all of this tension, and what everybody's going through, and this feeling of hopelessness and helplessness, right? And especially those of you that are parents, even if you have kids that are already grown, like one of the things that I was feeling during that time and over the last week is I was just messaging all of my friends, close friends of mine that have kids. And I'm like, how are you doing? Like, just checking in with parents in general. Like, how are you feeling right now? How's your heart? How are you dealing with everything that's going on? I think it's important for us to just check in with people very much the way that we were compelled to check in with people during COVID. And I know somebody here, and I'm going to try and go back. Raquel, yeah, is currently has COVID. Sorry. But those of us that have been sick or that have had COVID or know somebody that has had COVID or somebody that's lost somebody close or somebody that's just connected to some of these incredibly tragic events. I mean, we are all truly connected. And going back to why I wrote this book, part of the desire that I had, the incentive to write this book was to create an invitation for the reader, to create an invitation for all of us to inquire within and to really explore how we can get to know ourselves more so that we can be inclined to get to know the other better. Knowing ourselves, getting to know the other, being more empathic, being more kind, being able to be more open, and truly to create a radically loved life, right? To create a pathway for ourselves to be able to go through this journey together. So, as my first day back, plugging back into the world, I still remain hopeful, and I just know that being able to have gatherings like this, to be able to connect with people like this, even if it's virtually, is very important for us to remember that we have each other, that we are all obviously going through the same things. We're all feeling the same pulls. We're all feeling the same anxiety. We're feeling the same overwhelm. And I think it's noteworthy to say that we want the suffering to end. So that being said, um, I think let's get into some of the chapter work. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to have Tessa help me here. She's going to read some of chapter 5. I would just go through the beginning of self-esteem, Tessa, so just the top of page 60, from 65 to 67, and then we'll have a discussion. We'll try this template for a bit to see how we like it. Obviously, we're shaping our book club how we see fit. So let's do it together. So go for it, Tess, whenever you're ready.
I am ready. Thank you, Rosie. So, radical truth. You might be a diamond in the rough, but remember you're still a diamond. Act accordingly. Self respect. I respected other people more than I respected myself, my body, my money, and my time. Self respect is essential for your confidence and happiness and for feeling radically loved. When you lack self respect, you value other people's opinions of you more than your own. You value everyone else's time more and you overindulge in habits that don't serve you. Your environment is full of clutter and you exhaust yourself trying to be all things to all people. You omit the truth for fear of making waves, and you lack the ability to see beyond the perimeter you've created. When you have self respect, you no longer feel the need to compare yourself to other people. You value your time and respect your body. You build yourself up by nourishing your mind, body, and spirit. You create an environment that is decluttered and with items that reflect your character and bring you joy. You remain honest and communicate how you feel. You speak your truth. You listen intently. You have healthy boundaries and respect your time. You honor your failures and see them as valuable to your growth. That is self-respect. The only way I was able to see this was by recognizing how I just threw myself into everything I did. I let other people's lives infiltrate my own. I am a nurturing water sign, so I have a disposition to give up all of myself to caretake someone else's needs. This is not sustainable. At some point, these cracks will turn into fractures that are difficult to mend. For some, it may show up later in life in the form of abrupt job change, a breakdown, an affair, or an addiction. I was working so much I hadn't had a chance to stick my toes in the sand. The salon didn't survive the housing crash. I got a job as a personal assistant working in Malibu, and I took solace in being able to see the ocean. The ocean had always given me a sense of grounding and helped me remember I am still here. It had been months since I had done that. Tori and I were having a particularly difficult time in our relationship, which I decided to ignore. And instead, I put all my energy into my career. In college, I changed my major several times, and I frustrated Tori with my ever-changing career ideas. If it sounded interesting, I wanted to try it on for a size. The more I practiced yoga and the more I meditated, the more I realized how unhappy I was. I was experiencing withdrawals from my anxiety medication, and my body was starting to feel it. I woke up with back pain, everything I ate was bland, my joints were inflamed, and my head hurt constantly.
Thank you. This is the first time I've ever heard anybody read it, by the way.
Isn't that a cool experience?
It is wild. It is a wild feeling. But thank you so much for
Of course.
doing that justice. One of the
Yes.
things that I find interesting in this repetitive cycle that we do, because I feel like it's something we can all relate to. We go into these situations where we think this is going to make us happy, right? Oh, this is the next project. Let's just throw myself into this course or this schooling or this program, and this will be the thing to bring that joy and happiness. And it's interesting that I go into how the more I practice yoga and meditation, the more these truths came up, which is the gift of the practice, right? A lot of the times we might think, oh, yoga and meditation make me feel better because it just makes me feel so good. But the issue is also the solution, right? The issue is that when you are practicing yoga and meditation, yoga's purpose is to make the unconscious conscious. And so everything that is there once you're deep in your practice will really start to bubble up and come up. That's why a lot of the times people that have started practicing yoga, after a while they'll just stop because it's it's very confrontational to be able to sit and examine what lies beneath the surface. Like, what is really the cause of my unhappiness? Is it my relationship is over? Is it I hate my job? Is it I just don't like my environment? Is it I'm just not happy? We do everything in our power to numb ourselves from these feelings, to placate our emotions. Now, this is what I want to ask all of you. You know, there is this, how do we discern between maybe it's over to maybe I'm just overreacting, right? Because we are such emotional beings. How do you discern the difference between, am I just being very reactive right now, or is this my heart really telling me that something is not serving me? Because I feel like we've conditioned ourselves to be desensitized by our intuition. Interestingly enough, Tessa and I had this conversation because I was just in New Mexico, and that episode is not out yet, but Rebecca, there was a ghost story in there. I think you're going to love this episode, just so you guys know. But I talk all about how we ignore, a lot of the times we'll put ourselves through this torture because we're ignoring our intuitive sense, because we think, no, we're being weak, or you're just being dramatic, or you're being extra, where it's actually our intuition saying, no, this is not good for you, or you need to actually leave this situation, or you've come to the end of the road. But how do we discern that? So I'm curious, and I'd love to just open it up for a discussion, if you don't mind being recorded and unmuting yourself to have the discussion, or you can just put it in the chat, however you feel comfortable. But I'll open it up. So whoever wants to go first, go for it.
Uh, oh, go ahead,
Go ahead,
Nikki.
Nikki.
So I feel like intuition versus a response, the difference is that I get this nagging feeling in my gut that doesn't go away. I think response is more a momentary thing. Someone says something to you, you want to react. That's normal, and we all do that. And that's where the breathing and the pausing comes into play. But when it continues and I'm very, very intuitive, so everything's in my gut. I know things are wrong or off before I can even identify what it is. I just know something's not in alignment because I can feel it. So when that happens, I know that there's something going on, and then I have to sit with it. I think that's where the meditation practices come in, where you have to sit and really understand. You have to keep asking why. So this feels off. Why? what's going on in my life right now? Has there been any major changes? Has somebody come in? I mean, I know why I'm out of alignment right now. When you're moving, everything's up in the air. So I understand why I feel out of sorts. I can identify it. I can't really fix it in one fell swoop, but I do know that I have to take moments out of the moving process. Like yesterday, my husband and I went on a hike. We had to get out of the boxes. It was, and he actually is way better at it than me. He's like, we need to get out of here for like a few hours and get out of your lists and things to do. But I feel like that the reaction, when you ask whether it's just a reaction or an overreaction to something, I think those are things that are more, they go away quickly if you're just able to hold off on reacting. But the intuition comes with that feeling that doesn't go away until you address it. If that makes
Yes. I love that. And by the way, for me, I'm such a apropos, this is the body section, right? And I love how Nikki was pointing at herself when you know something, like when you know something, she said, when you really ask yourself, and she's pointing at her chest, she's pointing at her heart. I think it's also noteworthy to observe where you're feeling the inquiry. If it's up here, a lot of the times we'll feel something here in our heart, and then we'll go straight into the mind to lot I call it logicize. It's not even a word. Is it a word? I don't know. But we try to, yeah, create logic around what we're feeling. We're trying to dissipate it or distill it in a way that makes more sense to us, and not in a way to validate our emotion, but in a way to negate what we're feeling, which I find also really interesting. Raquel, do you want to go ahead and go next? And if you want to go after Raquel, just raise your hand.
Thank you. I agree so much with what Nikki just shared. Like for me, the first things that popped into my head had to do with like the stillness, finding the space for that stillness, which is kind of like the beingness, along with the intuitive part of it. And I think actually human design has helped me a little bit with that intuitive part, because some people will feel that kind of gut response, whereas I have more of an emotional response where I can have like emotional highs and lows, and I have to get to a place of like neutrality before I can actually be like, oh, okay, this is what I'm really feeling, as opposed to like, yes, no, you know? um, and I think the intuition part is huge because it brings you in, like you were just mentioning, Rosie, it brings you into the intelligence of your body versus the constant chatter of your mind. And in the last few years, ever since COVID, I've been really cultivating my intuitive gifts and learning how to focus my energy into the wisdom of my heart, into the wisdom of my sacral, into the wisdom of my feet, you know, to gain a better understanding and honestly a more realistic approach and reaction or response to the world around me. Because when I'm functioning just from this space right here, yeah, everything gets blown out of proportion because that's kind of what our brain does, right? So learning how to really bring your energy out of the mind and how to use and cultivate the mind as the tool that is, as opposed to thinking of it as the driving force, which it's not meant to be, really, really helps. And then, of course, making sure you have time to get out in nature and just experience the reality of life, as opposed to the kind of forced realities that humanity has put upon us, which sometimes is very much in opposition to what is really real in this world, which is something I struggle with sometimes.
Oh my goodness, I love that so much. Like that is so so true. I definitely relate to that, especially with the embodiment portion. There was this I did this what is this called when you time lapse. I'm like, what is this called when you video yourself? I did this time lapse one day during my book launch when I was just trying to, create stuff and organize, and I was doing kind of like a behind the scenes, and I noticed that for an entire day I was just I went from one room, I went from my office to the living room, back to the office, to bathroom, kitchen, office, I'm just kind of going back and forth. but in my mind, in your mind, you're elsewhere. You're thinking of things, you're planning, you're responding to emails in your brain. You don't, when you see the reality of what you're doing, it makes so much sense why you might feel stuck or you might feel disconnected, right? I mean, it's so simple. It's like the simplest thing. If this person, me, would just go outside and go for a walk around that's why I do that. I try to do that at least once a day, either in the morning or in the evening as the sun's going down without my phone. I just take my mason jar, my water, and I just go for a stroll around the block. And even just that, taking myself out of the environment creates such a different energy. The creative energy I mean, when I was writing the book, I was doing it twice a day, getting out of my environment, just being able to stoke that new energy, that new flow, that embodiment sense, the reality of what you're saying. I relate to what you're saying so much. And I think it has to do a lot with that part of us where we can really uplift our own intuition, our own innate knowing, and begin to create a more trustworthy relationship to ourselves. Because I feel like a lot of times we don't trust ourselves. We might tell ourselves something and then we, again, try to create logic around why it may not work or why it's wrong or why we should just stay put and do what's right, do the secure thing. So I think it's really interesting. Do we have another hand written? Nanette, did you want to speak? You just have to unmute yourself.
All right, I'm nervous. I don't really talk that much, but
Hey, we're all friends here.
okay. But you were just saying actually where you watched yourself just going back and forth, but you're so many places in your head. I was like, wow, yeah. And because I feel stuck a lot. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm always in the house. So, but I'm a million places in my head. Um, Going back to what I think it was Nikki is her name, the first person that was talking about feeling into intuition and if it's a nagging feeling. I have that, but I'm also like a lifelong like midnight bolter. Like I run from things constantly. So I have to, when I have that nag, I sit in it and I sit in stillness with, okay, am I reacting? What if I didn't have this thing that's irritating me so much right now? Like I have to feel into what that would feel like if I didn't have that, to feel if it's something I actually don't want. Because if my life didn't have, like, say, my husband's irritating me, if he wasn't there in a normal circumstance, would I feel okay with it? And I have to kind of put myself in a situation where the thing that's bothering me isn't there to see if it's actually real, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. Obviously, I can 100% relate to that.
Yeah, your book, I was like, wow.
You're like, that is so interesting because out of all of the different uh, passages in the book, that's been the one that I have had the biggest response to, being able to see their relationship in that lens. And I feel like, especially in the world of spirituality, wellness, we focus a lot on the self work that we need to do for our healing process. We think about the list that we need to create for others to fit into our design, to fit into our life. Like, oh, let's build the 10 best qualities of your perfect mate. We're so compelled to create lists like this, but how often do we create the list that we want to be an asset to somebody else, or we want to like, these are the 10 ways that I'm going to be the best partner. This is how I'm going to uplift my mate. This is how I'm going to show up for them. This is how I'm going to listen. And even with friends, with friendships, right? Like, I want my friends to be this way, and we can make a list and create boundaries and create templates for people to come into our lives. But again, how often do we create those same prerequisites for ourselves? And I think part of what I wanted to do in the book was to invite that self-reflection, to remember that we are both. We are both the lover and the loved. And it's important for us to be able to note that paradox. The whole book is about paradox, right? It's like, it's not this, it's not that. It's very yogic in the sense of the reason why there's so many water references and metaphors. I mean, throughout each chapter, there's a river or water or ocean or wave, because water can adapt to any situation, and our body's made mostly of water. So why can we then not make ourselves bend, create different ways of being, adapt to situations, observe and note our resilience when we are in those moments of feeling stuck, when we feel overwhelmed, when we feel anxiety. It's so easy for us to feel that overwhelming sense of, I mean, I can go on. I've been doing it lately and I stopped. I have this very abusive relationship with news sites, right? Like CNN or whatever, like MSNBC or Politico, wherever I get my news source from, where I just look and I'm like, this is tragedy porn. Like, this is all this is all this, like, where are the articles of all the advances they're doing right now with all these venture capitalists investing in more eco-friendly agriculture and in all like the really great things that are happening with our environment, and companies are really paying attention to sustainability. Like, that is newsworthy. Like, let's but we all know the psychological implications of creating that tragedy porn. We have that psychological addiction, and they're feeding on our emotions, right? Like, this is how they keep us hooked. So without getting too far into that whole thing, but I think, for us to be able to sort of take the initiative of, okay, I know what's going to serve my highest good. I know how to take action in my life. I know how to focus on the good. Oh, the reason why I brought that up was because if I wanted to just see how the world is falling apart, all I have to do is just go read the news, right? As opposed to, okay, what can I do? What actual steps can I take to making the world a better place? I mean, I read that article that was talking about the monarchs being extinct, and some of you that follow me know what I did. I just started to grow monarchs in my house, and I created a monarch sanctuary, and we raised monarchs, and that was how I fixed the issue for myself. It's like, how can I be of service? Now we bring it to, that's the macro level. If we bring it to the micro level, it's like, what steps can you take? For you, Nanette, it might be, if you work from home like I do, make it a point to just go outside, to go for a walk, or just open the windows and get some fresh air in your space, light a candle, put a diffuser on, like, just create even the movement of wind to sort of move those energies around. Yes, exactly. I'm reading it. Doesn't I love that. I love how many of you on Instagram I have been inspired by the growing of the monarch sanctuary. And by the way, Tori's building this. I'll show you guys on Instagram, but he's building an entire box thing in the back. So we have like a huge outdoor section for them to now grow in, because they overtook our little breakfast nook, and people would come in and be like, what are you guys doing? Like, what science project do you guys have going on? So I'm really excited about that. Okay, but let's that being said, let's move on to the next topic. I'm going to unless anybody else wants to read page 78, Love is a Battlefield, I'll have Tessa do it, but if anybody else wants to, you can raise your hand. Tessa will choose at random.
I can't see people's hands raising, but
Oh,
I guess I'll go. Unless I physically see your hand raise.
physically raise your hand unless you raise your hand.
Going
Okay,
once,
Tessa, go
going
for it.
twice. Okay, love is a battlefield. The Bhagavad Gita is a Hindu sacred text originally written in Sanskrit that forms part of a larger epic, the Mahabharata. Wow, it's been a while since I've said that word. Yoga is presented in the Bhagavad Gita as the process by which a person can connect with the absolute or divine. The Bhagavad Gita is a narrative told through a dialogue between Arjuna, a warrior, and his charioteer, who is the god Vishnu disguised as Krishna. Arjuna doubts whether he should go into battle, and Krishna explains that he must fulfill his dharma, or duty, as a warrior. In his explanation, Krishna discusses various types of yoga, including jnana, bhakti, karma, and raja. One of my yogi friends has an aversion to this text because of its inherent non spiritual setting on a battlefield. She thinks it's important for us to evolve and make our own choices without the insertion of a third party directive, like in this poem. I disagree. The story serves as a metaphor for our internal battle, the battle we are constantly fighting, the struggle of making choices. In our journey to healing and to mastering our own life, action is inevitable. It is the representation for life as we know it, the truest expression of love.
So true. Again, so weird, but so true. So true. I really had expanded this portion. It makes me a little sad that it only 3 paragraphs of what I wrote about the Bhagavad Gita made it into the book. But again, it's like first book, you kind of just have to do as you're told. But I really wanted to expand on this idea that we are both, you know, we're both the warrior and this wise being, right? If you don't know the whole story, right? He's being it starts with Arjuna at the top of this mountain, cliff's edge, looking down and seeing this battle about to take place with basically essentially his 2 families, cousins against cousins, brothers against brothers, and these 2 opposing sides, and he essentially has to choose. And throughout the entire thing, he's in this dilemma of, do I fight to be or not to be, right? Do I fight? Do I not fight? What do I do? And later on in the book, in chapter 12, I talk about this indecision. And that part of the story and this were written together. So some people, it may make sense, it may not, but I talk about the indecision being part of this, I talk about the story how when I was little, my mom and I, like, she wanted me to go into the ocean and the waves were really strong and I was really little and she was kind of pulling me. We were traversing and I was like pulling back, like, no, like she was kind of forcing me to go. And she was pulling me, not because she wanted me to she wanted to be aggressive. She was being aggressive, but she wanted me to not be close to where the waves were breaking because it was so intense there. So she's trying to move me away and I'm just like pulling back, like, no, like I don't want to get in. It's like, it's too much. And so we're kind of stuck right in between. And then this big wave comes and just tosses us and we go through. And I just remember, I mean, it's such a vivid memory for me where I think about the metaphor of that. It was the fear and the indecision that kept me in this perimeter of wreckage, right? And how often do we him and ha trying to make a decision, and it's the indecision that gets us in trouble, that leaves us in this mess, that creates the stress, that creates the anxiety, because we're having the same conversation with our friends. Should I not? I don't know if I should. I don't know if I should. We go into this place of not knowing where to go. And ultimately, sorry, it's spoiler alert in case you don't actually know the story of the Bhagavad Gita, but he does end up fighting. And part of this journey was him doing his dharma. He's a warrior. So at the end of the day, he has to follow his duty to fight. I mean, that's part of our journey. It's like we are born to be who we are born to be, and we have to be able to trust that we have all the tools that we need in order to live our life to the fullest now, right? It's the indecision, it's the being in between that keeps us from learning that next lesson, right? Because our life is always going to be pummeled by gigantic obstacles and waves that are just this life, like we can't live in fear, right? But what we can do is live with doing making a decision that is grounded in strength and confidence, and something that makes us feel powerful, that allows us to remember that we are who we are. And and sometimes that's all that we can do is our duty, right? It's just like sometimes it doesn't have to mean anything, sometimes it just is what it is. I mean, it's like one of my least favorite things to say. It's like, oh, it is what it is. It's like such an easy throwaway thing to just make sense of something that doesn't make sense. But guess what? Like, life doesn't make sense a lot of the times. Like, I revert back to bad things happen to good people all the time, and there's no reason for it, and sometimes good things happen to bad people and we don't know why, right? And I think understanding that the bigger picture is our our ability to just live and work through our purpose, to be here, to be on our path. I remember having this conversation with my sister years ago when I was learning about all of these Eastern philosophies. I was probably in my early 20s, and she's only 3 years older than I am, but she's very much a, I don't know, like scholarly person. She teaches English literature and she's very well read, and she's definitely an agnostic person. And so I'm having this conversation with her about, like why. I'm like, why then do I have an opportunity to do something and somebody who's less fortunate doesn't? And her response was always, well, that's your path. They have their own path. Like, you can't stop living your path and your journey just because somebody else can't live theirs. That doesn't make any sense. And that really helped me understand the importance of us being able to live our lives. Like, we're all here for, again, it's like we're here for a reason. We don't know what the reason is. Maybe there is no reason. It just, things are just the way they are because they are, and that's okay. And we can move on with our life, just doing that, what we need to do. So I don't know. I hope that came through in that passage as part of our last discussion. I'd really love to open it up again and just kind of hear what your guys' thoughts are, see if this landed with you, see if anything else came up, if it made sense, if there's anything that maybe you would have wished it would have elaborated more on. Go for it.
I'll go. Hello. So I feel
Oh, I was muted. I was calling on you guys, and I was like, okay, just unmute yourself and start talking. Go for it.
Okay, you can hear me, right? Rosie, you and I have had these conversations so many times. You're familiar with my ability to sit on the fence in perpetuity in terms of decision making. And it feels like this lifelong journey and lesson that I keep revisiting over and over again. I feel like it's a blessing and a curse that I have this ability to see the pros and cons to both decisions, which plants me squarely in the middle of the fence usually, right? So what I feel like I keep returning to as a means to getting over that fence, choosing a side, is noticing if the fear is stronger than the love or the wisdom or the grounding, and trying to make that decision in that place of wisdom, love, or grounding, and not let the fear, which is usually louder and easier to hear and takes up more of my attention and energy. Not that the fear doesn't have a purpose. It's a really good and healthy tool to acknowledge and utilize when we need it. But I think we live in the society this day and age where we have this kind of like constant alarm clock around our neck that we forget to turn off, right? Like, can you imagine if you actually didn't turn your alarm clock off all day long and you walked around it with it around your neck all day? Well, that's kind of what it feels like, right? When we're constantly in that state of fear or low level anxiety. So it's just a helpful reminder to understand what emotion is driving, what purpose is it serving, and is that helping me feel grounded, loved, and wise in my choices? Yeah.
Thank you. I love that. That's really great. Thanks for sharing that. Next.
Thank you for sharing that, Tessa. I agree with you on that. I think what came to mind for me, Rosie, was when you were mentioning that this book is kind of like a paradox, right? And I see this whole idea of like, is it destiny and fate, or are we like are we the creators of our life? As like this big paradox I sometimes sit with in spiritual teachings and learnings, because I sometimes feel like I'm like wavering between like, I'm just going to go with the flow and see what the universe provides. Because honestly, like that's typically when more magic happens for me, is when I'm not trying to force and hustle. But then I'm also like, you got to kind of create in your life. We're all here to be creators. And then of course there's the whole like manifestation and, you know, the whole circle of you co-create your life, and so I think sometimes I don't know where I stand in that as well. Like, am I destined? And am I just going with this flow and just trying to align myself more and more with what my soul came here to do, which I do believe our souls did come here with maybe not just one purpose, but reasons, goals. Or am I just like going to be at the whims of whatever I feel like I want to create in that moment? And I could do this and I could do that and I could have this and I could have that. And sometimes to me that can feel a little, I'm going to be honest, selfish. So I think that this story kind of speaks a little bit to that paradox too. Like, is it destiny? Is it creation? Is it both? Are they merged? I don't know.
I love that. Again, it's like I totally agree with that. I think it's beautiful. Anybody else want to share, elaborate on that?
I'm just going to say I'm a lot like Tessa, where I start to see both sides of a decision maybe, or I mean, it could be anything like, well, should I go have pizza for dinner or should I go, and then I get this FOMO and I'm like, but what if I decide wrong? What if I really did want Thai food instead of wood-fired pizza? So, so I do like the questions Tessa brought up. And, I really do try to just say, okay, what was my initial thought? And what, if I sit for a second and get quiet, I can usually say, all right, this way is better for me. And it makes more sense for me than the fear base or the FOMO base decision. So yeah, great conversation today, everybody.
Oh, I love that so much. Thank you all so much. We're gonna close with any questions that you all may have. If there's anything else that you want to share or a question you want to ask me personally or the group, happy to answer. Just you can unmute yourself, and then we'll close our session for today. No? No?
No question, but just wanted to say thank you for bringing this, making this happen, bring this together. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. It's my pleasure. I love doing any excuse for a gathering I'm going to take. I was telling Tessa before we talked about doing this, I was like, okay, how could we just gather with everybody and have it be just like a hang session? And so I'm like, book club. Hello, this is fun. So next month we will meet again, first Friday of the month, and I'll have to look. I think what we'll probably do is we'll go into the chapter of resilience a little bit more, and then we might dig into the spirit portion of the book. We'll have the structure will be very similar to this. Thanks, Nikki. Thank you all so much for being here and for taking a little bit of time on a Friday. And those of you that are watching after the fact, we hope you can meet us live for the next session, which is, hold on, I will tell you in case you're watching this after the fact. It will be oh my goodness, July 1. July 1st. Wow, we're in the summer. It's summertime. It's June. This is so wild. We're halfway through 2022. Okay, very exciting, I guess, right? Okay, so thank you again, everybody, for sharing, everybody that was here. I'll be sending an email with the replay of this in case you want to watch it again. And for those of you who didn't get to be here in person, I look forward to seeing you all again in a month. Take care. Hugs.